It was just half a month before our wedding, when Willow had a big argument with me, forcing me to make concessions. The reason was, she wanted to have a child with the son of her mentor. She said, "We'll just do IVF. It doesn't necessarily mean anything." Her mentor was critically ill, and his greatest wish was to see the Ito family continue. I was speechless. "We have half a month left until the wedding, and you're going to have a baby with another man. Don't you think that's absurd?" To my surprise, she yelled at me for being inconsiderate, saying I couldn't even fulfill the old man's last wish. With that, she resolutely slammed the door and left. I watched her leave and then posted a message on my Moments. I wrote, "Wedding in half a month, but I'm getting a new bride. Serious inquiries only." Chapter 1. I sat on the sofa, watching as most of the comments under my post were friends joking around. After all, who didn't know how much I loved Willow? Almost losing myself in the process. No one would believe that. Just as Willow and I were about to tie the knot, I'd choose to leave her. I had been pursuing Willow for 3 years before I finally thought I had a perfect ending. I became her boyfriend, and on my 27th birthday, I proposed to her. I thought all my efforts over the years were finally about to pay off. But then Willow hit me with a blow to the head. She wanted to have a child with another man. I'm not exactly a magnanimous person, but my love for Willow had made me so humble that she thought I was magnanimous enough to let go of my fiancée for someone else. I sat on the sofa, dazed, when suddenly the sharp ringtone of my phone broke the silence. It was Anna, someone I hadn't heard from in years. If I think about it, Anna and I were childhood friends. When we were young, she would always follow me around, and people would joke that she was my little shadow. After we grew up, Anna became a cold, aloof person, often described as the unreachable high flower. But I never thought of her that way. Though Anna hardly spoke, she never tired of listening to all my nonsense. After the college entrance exam, Anna went to the capital, while I went to Haicheng. Later, I met Willow and fell hopelessly in love with her. I pursued her relentlessly, and for years I didn't even return to B City. So, when I got Anna's call now, I was a little caught off guard. Before I could say anything, Anna's cold voice came through the receiver. She said, "Is what you said true?" I asked, "What?" It took me a while to realize what Anna was referring to. I looked at the lone photo of Willow and me on the wall, so I replied, "It's true." She laughed softly, her tone even a little pleased, and said, "If you don't mind, consider me as an option." A gust of wind blew in through the slightly open balcony door, and the thin curtain that hadn't been hung up was lifted by the breeze, covering the bird of paradise plant in the corner. I replied, "All right, what are your conditions?" Anna was a lawyer, but the Lee family had been in business for generations. So Anna naturally had a bit of a business mindset. I didn't believe she had no ulterior motive. She said, "I'll send you a prenuptial agreement tomorrow." As expected, I knew Anna wouldn't make a deal that wasn't worth her while. She paused and then continued, "Also, George, I hope you can change my contact name to wife." I was a bit confused. I instinctively pulled the phone away from my ear. And yes, it was Anna on the other end. But I couldn't help but wonder if she had lost her mind. It had been years since we last spoke, and how had she become so? She continued, "George, this is the first step towards your new life." Anna seemed to understand my situation better than I did. She knew my relationship was a mess, and she was also well aware that I was only clinging to her as a lifeline to escape this unhealthy relationship. I asked, "Is there anything else?" My grip on the phone tightened involuntarily. She said, "George, you know I need a normal marriage." Her voice was soft, almost enticing. She must have known what I was about to ask, because she answered before I could. She said, "What I mean is, I need you to fulfill all the duties of a husband. To not only be my husband but also the father of our child, even if the family is pressuring me. I don't want our marriage to be a relationship without feelings, like that of roommates." I stood up and pulled down the white sheer curtain from the bird of paradise plant. Staring out at the setting sun, I calmly responded, "Anna, if we're getting married, I don't plan on pretending." She said, "In that case, I'll come to Haicheng to pick you up tomorrow." I replied, "Give me half a month. Some things need to be cleared up first." After hanging up, I changed Anna's contact name to wife. Just as she said, this was my first step toward escaping this relationship. Willow hadn't come back yet, or rather, she hadn't been back for several days. If this were before, I probably would have tirelessly called her over and over, asking where she was and when she'd come home. But now, I couldn't care less. Wherever she was, it was obvious. I contacted a few mutual friends with Willow and had them retrieve the wedding invitations. They were quite surprised, even though Willow didn't want a big wedding. I stubbornly wrote the invitations, almost as a form of ritual. I stuffed the invitations back into my bag, gazing at them gloomily. I didn't want to hide anything from anyone. So I truthfully told them. Well, the bride has changed. So the wedding invitations naturally need to be redone. When I said that, there was not much surprise around me. Instead, more laughter and teasing from friends. Clearly, they didn't take me seriously. Thinking back, it made sense. I had loved Willow so much. Never caring about her coldness. If it were someone else, making the same decision, I probably wouldn't have believed it either. But that's fine. I'll prove with my actions that this time, I've truly let go. I took back all the invitations I had sent out. And before long, Willow returned home. She had always been particular about neatness. But the white dress she was wearing now had some wrinkles. Her eyes were bloodshot, and she looked exhausted. I could immediately tell she was in a bad state. She looked at me, and her first words perfectly matched the decision I had just made. She said, "You should recall all the wedding invitations we sent out. My teacher passed away, and I need to observe mourning for at least 6 months, so I can't get married." When she said this, Willow probably thought I would be furious. After all, getting married was something I had been urging for a while, and I knew my grandfather had been eagerly waiting for me to get married, so I must have been anxious too. She probably even had a retort ready, but I just calmly said, "I understand. My condolences." She continued, "The memorial service for my teacher is today. Will you accompany me to pay our respects? He always wanted to meet you." I paused as I was washing a cup. Although I didn't like Makoto, his father was a highly respected professor, and I had once met him briefly. I could probably describe the old man as having an air of sage-like grace. Sometimes I didn't understand how such a kind and elegant person could have a son like Makoto. The deceased is gone, and it wouldn't hurt to offer him a flower. I dried my hands, pulled out a black coat from the wardrobe, grabbed my bag, and left with Willow, who was already made up. Mr. Ito was indeed a respected figure, and the mourning hall was filled with many people. Makoto, supporting his mother, was thanking those who came to pay their respects. When he saw Willow, Makoto immediately let go of his mother, took a few steps forward, and grabbed Willow's hand, tears streaming down his face. By the end, he almost collapsed, and Willow rushed to support him. Comforting him, she said to me, "I'll stay here with him. You can go ahead." I nodded, then walked alone to Mr. Ito's portrait, bowed 3 times, and moved toward the pale-faced elderly woman standing aside. I said, "Mrs. Ito, my condolences." She wiped her tears and took my hand, nodding as she said, "You're Willow's boyfriend, right? Thank you for coming to see old Ito. I heard you were supposed to get married, but Willow is a kind and devoted girl. She insisted on observing mourning for 6 months on behalf of her teacher. It must have been tough for you." I quietly listened, my heart a mix of emotions, but I didn't respond. I didn't bring up the absurd things between Willow and her son, but Mrs. Ito seemed to read something in my eyes and sighed deeply. She said, "Willow, we practically watched her grow up." Old Ito was her mentor, and from university through her master's and doctorate, she always held him in high regard. She's a person who values emotions, which is why she made this decision. I hope you won't hold it against her. Her words carried a hint of pleading. I forced a smile and replied, "I understand her decision." After all, the bride had already changed, so blaming her would be meaningless now. She nodded and added, "Don't mind Makoto. Even though he's always been very close to Willow, I can tell she doesn't feel that way about him. She actually likes you." My heart skipped a beat, and I looked at Mrs. Ito in disbelief. "Likes me?" I repeated her words, trying to read something in her eyes. Seeing my reaction, Mrs. Ito hastened to explain, "Child, I'm not lying. Old Ito and I always thought she was too immersed in books to have feelings for anyone. But since you came into her life, she often mentions you in front of us, even if it's just about bumping into you somewhere or something you did for her, like cooking something delicious or doing something silly to win her over." It might sound like complaining, but we all know it's just her way of showing love without realizing it. I listened to Mrs. Ito's words, my heart a swirl of mixed emotions. Maybe in the past, hearing this would have made me happy and satisfied, but now I just felt a bitter sense of irony. If Willow truly loved me, why had I never felt her sincerity? If she loved me, why was she willing to have a child with another man? I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. From the moment she agreed to have a child with Makoto, she and I were doomed to a dead-end relationship. As the last student of Mr. Ito, Willow was also the last to leave. Standing at the door of the funeral home, I saw Makoto's car parked in front of me. He rolled down the window, and I saw Willow in the front passenger seat, while Mrs. Ito sat in the back with an apologetic look. Makoto, his eyes red, said, "We want to go to the cemetery first to visit Dad." I frowned, about to get into the car, but he stopped me. "Mr. Wong," he said, "I mean, just me, Willow, and my mom." Mrs. Ito frowned. "Makoto." Before she could finish, Makoto, in visible pain, said, "Dad's gone. I just want my closest people to be with me while I talk to him." "Is that too much to ask?" Willow interrupted. "George, could you wait for me a bit? I'll come back after we visit the cemetery." Without waiting for my response, Makoto closed the window and drove off without looking back. I smiled bitterly. I had known this already. Willow always put Makoto first in everything. I waited at the funeral home for 2 hours, and as the sun began to set, the security guard kindly asked if I was waiting for someone. It was then that I realized Willow wouldn't be coming back today. The funeral home was located in the suburbs, and it was hard to get a cab. I stared at the page where no one was accepting the ride request, and finally sighed in resignation as I walked out of the funeral home. It had been sunny earlier, but halfway down the road, the sky suddenly opened up with a torrential downpour. Turning back wasn't an option, so I had no choice but to continue on, heading toward the foot of the mountain. After a while, I finally managed to hail a taxi. By the time I got back to the apartment, I felt lightheaded and weak. I hastily took a hot shower, squatted down by the TV cabinet to search for fever medicine, then collapsed onto the bed, wrapping myself tightly in the blankets. I slept fitfully, waking up several times in the middle of the night. My dreams were strange and surreal. I felt like I dreamt of many things, but when I woke up, I couldn't remember them clearly. After swallowing some cold medicine weakly, Willow opened the door and walked in. She didn't even look at me, heading straight to the bedroom. A moment later, she came out, pushing a suitcase. She said, "Makoto hasn't been doing well lately, so I'm going to stay with him for a few days. If you need anything, just call me." Without waiting for a response, she opened the door and left. She never saw me. Otherwise, how could she not notice my pale face from the fever? I stayed at home for 2 days, then wrote my resignation letter. On Friday morning, I went to the office. My supervisor subtly asked if it was about the salary, but I shook my head and just said I needed to go back home. The supervisor asked, "So you and your girlfriend will be in a long-distance relationship from now on?" Holding the resignation letter from HR, I shook my head and said, "No, we're breaking up. I need to go back to get married." With a surprised look from HR, I walked out of the place I had worked at for 4 years. When I got home, I saw Makoto in the living room, which was a surprise. Willow, seeing me holding the suitcase, was clearly startled. She blurted out, "What's this?" I remained calm and quickly made up a reason. Showing no sign of nervousness on my face, I said, "The company relocated to a new address, so I just moved my stuff back for now." She asked, "Where did it move to?" Willow furrowed her brows, and just as I was about to answer, Makoto suddenly interrupted. He said, "Wong bro, my dad passed away recently, and I've been really down. I've probably done some stupid things, like suggesting having a kid with Willow. Looking back, it seems ridiculous, but honestly, there's nothing between Willow and me. Now that my dad's gone, I don't even want to have kids anymore. I'm sorry. I hope you're not upset about it." He put on a look of utter grief. If I hadn't already seen the screenshot of that provocative chat, I might have actually believed his act. But now, I couldn't be bothered to call out his little tricks. I just nodded lightly and carried the suitcase back to my room. As soon as I got everything settled in the room, my phone rang at the most inconvenient moment, and the sound was coming from the living room. It was then that I realized I had left my phone there. Just as I was about to go out to get it, the door suddenly swung open, and Willow stood there, looking furious. She was holding my phone in her hand, her gaze fixed on me. She asked, "Who's the wife saved in your phone?" Chapter 2. I snatched my phone from Willow's hand, casually dismissing the situation. "It's nothing, just a friend." I was joking with the nickname. Then, with her suspicious gaze still on me, I walked out onto the balcony. I didn't understand why Anna was calling me at this time. I asked, "Is there something wrong?" On the other end of the line, I could hear the sound of a cup clinking against the wall. Anna's voice was a bit tired. She said, "No, just feeling a bit worn out." I wanted to hear your voice. Also, I wanted to ask, have you looked over the prenup yet? Honestly, Anna's prenup was incredible. My senior from law school said, "Anna must have lost her mind to send you this." I took a close look at the terms and realized that if, in the future, I thought she wasn't fulfilling her marital duties properly, half of her assets would go to me upon divorce. The things I couldn't get from Willow seemed to be slowly coming to me from Anna. I said, "I have no objections, but why would you want to give me half of your assets?" Anna chuckled lightly. "It's nothing. I just want to give you the best I can." Suddenly, I didn't feel so bad about breaking up with Willow. She continued, "Once I get back to B City, let's sign it." "All right." After hanging up, when I returned to the living room, Willow was frowning as she looked at me. She asked, "All done with your call?" I nodded and turned to head toward the kitchen. She said, "Next time, don't nickname your friends as wife. It's not good." I turned back to look at her and suddenly laughed. I didn't understand why Willow had the position to lecture me, especially when she and Makoto had been far more inappropriate than my harmless wife label. I was about to reply when Makoto suddenly spoke up. He said, "Wong bro, Willow, I'll treat you both to a meal, as an apology for disturbing you these days." Makoto's restaurant choice was known for its seafood dishes, but when I looked at the table piled high with seafood, I didn't know where to start. Makoto, however, innocently looked at me and said, "Wong bro, aren't you eating? This is their specialty." Willow added, "He's allergic to seafood." Willow placed a scallop in Makoto's bowl but didn't dare look up at me. I couldn't help but sneer inwardly. So she knew I was allergic to seafood but was still accommodating Makoto. Makoto apologized. Sorry Wong bro, I didn't know you were allergic to seafood. What should we do now? The dishes have already been served. I silently mocked him inside but didn't respond. I waved to the waiter and ordered a dish of stir-fried vegetables and beef stew for myself. After the meal, Makoto suggested going to a movie, but I had lost interest. I waved my hand and said, "You guys go ahead. I've got some work at the company. Need to work overtime." Without waiting for Willow to call after me, I entered the elevator. When I returned to the apartment, I found that our wedding photos had been delivered. Suddenly, I felt uninterested, so I threw them all into a nearby box and began tidying up my things. As I cleaned, I realized something. Over the years, I had been the one giving Willow gifts, but she had hardly given me anything, not even enough to fill a single box. I threw the box of things, along with the wedding photos, into the trash bin by the community gate. Tomorrow, they'd be taken away by the garbage truck. On my way back, I saw that Makoto had posted a collage of 9 photos on his social media, one of which showed him and Willow standing in front of a claw machine, their backs to the camera. The caption read, "Thanks to my adorable junior for accompanying me." I smiled and gave his post a like. He probably thought this would still get a reaction out of me, but the truth was, I no longer cared about Willow. Before I could put my phone down, Anna's message came through, a screenshot of an order confirmation. She said, "George, I've booked you a flight back to B City for 2 p.m. tomorrow. In half a month, I'll be waiting for you at the airport." Willow didn't return until the next day, just before noon. At that time, I was in the study, organizing my things. Everything I didn't need went into the shredder. Willow seemed to feel guilty and her attitude toward me had softened. She asked, "George, there's been so much going on these days. Today, I'll stay with you. What do you want to eat? I'll make it for you. How about sweet and sour ribs and dried shrimp and winter melon soup? Or should I add some stir-fried vegetables and mapo tofu?" As she spoke, Willow rolled up her sleeves and tied on an apron, heading into the kitchen. Actually, Willow was a very good cook. It's just that over the years, she had been busy with work, and I had always been the one cooking. Over time, I had forgotten that Willow could cook well and take care of others. I let her do it, treating this meal as a farewell dinner between us. I turned and went back to the bedroom to continue packing. When I came out with my suitcase, Willow had already set the table with 3 dishes and 1 soup. She was quick. When she saw my suitcase, there was a hint of surprise in her eyes. She asked, "Are you going on a business trip?" I didn't answer her, just rolled up my sleeves and said, "Let's eat first. Afterward, I have something to tell you." She replied, "Okay, we'll eat first. Afterward, I'll take you to the airport." "What time is your flight?" She placed a piece of rib in my bowl. It had been so long since I had tasted Willow's cooking that I forgot that I had fallen for her because, after I had a high fever, she stayed by my side and even made me a bowl of lean meat porridge. That taste, I would never forget. After finishing the meal, Willow looked at me, resting her chin on her hand, waiting for me to speak. I finished the last sip of soup, put down the bowl, and wiped my mouth. Willow, actually. But the next second, her phone rang. She picked it up and looked at the screen. It was Makoto. She said, "Sorry, George, just wait a moment." For the first time, I wanted to stubbornly tell her that I was leaving for B City. I furrowed my brows and said, "Willow, can you just listen to me for once?" On the other end of the line, I heard Makoto's voice, filled with sorrow. "Willow, I dreamt of my dad again. I miss him so much. Do you think he's lonely over there? I want to go find him." Listening to Willow patiently comfort him, I suddenly lost interest. Why waste my time on this? It made me realize, not only was Makoto a good actor, but he was also completely devoid of morals, using the death of his own father as a tool to win over women. "George." Willow hung up the phone and looked at me with a guilty expression, calling my name. I waved my hand and said, "You can go." She seemed relieved and went to the bedroom to grab her coat. Then, she kissed me lightly on the lips and said, "George, can we talk when I get back?" There would be no later. Willow. I watched her leave and glanced at the messy dinner table. My flight was in 3 hours, so I grabbed my coat and suitcase, planning to head out. When I stood by the entrance, I still went back to the bedroom. I left a note for Willow. It read, "Willow, this is where it ends. I wish you and Makoto a happy family." Before boarding, I saw that Makoto had posted something on his social media, a photo of Willow from behind, wearing an apron. I liked the post and received a message from him. He said, "George, how can you compete with my position in Willow's heart? As soon as I say something, She'll drop everything to be with me. What do you have to offer in this rivalry? The airport announced my boarding, and I smiled as I typed a reply to Makoto. I wrote, yeah, so I'm stepping aside for you. I wish you and Willow a lifetime of happiness. When you get married, make sure to send me an invitation. I'll definitely give you a red envelope. I blocked and deleted him. There was no need to stay in contact with either him or Willow. 3 hours later, I landed in B City. When I passed through customs, I saw Anna, dressed in a white coat, standing at the front of the crowd. It had been years, but she looked just the same as before. She handed me a bouquet of lisianthus and said, "Welcome home." I asked, "You remember I like lisianthus?" She pulled my arm, guiding me as we walked, and even though the airport was noisy, I could still hear her clearly. She said, "I remember everything about you." The air conditioning in the airport was so strong that it made me flush with warmth. When I sat in Anna's Porsche Panamera, I finally had a real sense of what it meant to have Lee, the lawyer, as an asset. To be honest, neither Anna nor I were rich kids. We were just a bit better off than the average. Nothing extravagant. It seemed that Lee, as a partner at the law firm, had indeed made a fortune these past few years. I said, "Anna, I've actually been meaning to ask you something." I looked out the window at the sunset over the overpass and spoke up. She didn't respond, just nodded for me to continue. I asked, "Why did you agree to my ridiculous request? Don't you think I'm just deceiving you?" I tightened my grip on the seatbelt unconsciously, and I could hear the pounding of my heart. She turned to look at me, her gaze intense, and said, "I thought about it, but even so, I didn't want to give up on that 1% chance. If it's fake, then I'll just let you fool me again. If it's real, then I'll have gained something." Anna's gaze was gentle, and suddenly, something clicked in my mind. I asked, "Anna, do you like me?" She let out a soft laugh, reached out, and playfully tapped my arm. "George, after all these years, you finally figured it out." The revelation that Anna liked me shocked me greatly. Honestly, I had never thought that someone like Anna, who cared so little about anything other than academics, would ever lower her guard for me. When we were younger, my parents had joked about me marrying Anna when I grew up. At that time, I shook my head so hard it felt like a drum. In my eyes, Anna, with her clear boundaries with men, was the type who would probably grow old and live alone, never finding someone. Later, I learned the term asexual, and I thought it fit Anna perfectly. But now, she was telling me she liked me. She could read my expression without difficulty, and as she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, she said, "George, haven't you noticed? You're the only one who can stay within 3 meters of me. Haven't you realized that I'm always thinking about you?" I stared at her in disbelief and asked, "What? Isn't it because you see me as a brother?" Anna looked at me with the frustration of someone who felt like I was hopeless. She said, "George, what normal person would want to kiss their brother?" Chapter 3. Her words were too blunt. It made me feel so awkward. She probably sensed my discomfort, so she stopped teasing me and just saw me home. The Wang and Lee families lived close to each other, so the way back was always the same. In the elevator, we both stood silently, and I tried my best not to disturb the quiet atmosphere, my eyes drifting around but inevitably glancing at her. I noticed that when I looked at her, her gaze seemed to be subtly watching me too, which made my heart race uncontrollably. The elevator dinged, and the doors opened slowly. Anna stopped at my door, clearly not planning to come inside any further. She said, "All right, I won't go in and interrupt your reunion with Grandpa Wang." I nodded silently and moved my luggage to the side. She let out a soft laugh and said, "Okay, go inside quickly. In a couple of days, I'll come with my parents to discuss our wedding details." Her words made my heart skip again, pounding like a drum. I gave her a playful eye roll, took out my keys, opened the door, and didn't look back or say anything else, but warmth filled my chest. Dragging my suitcase, I slowly stepped into the home I hadn't returned to in years. An inexplicable feeling of homesickness rushed over me. The living room was quiet, and the sound of the suitcase wheels scraping across the floor echoed loudly in the empty space. Suddenly, a hurried set of footsteps came from outside, accompanied by Grandpa Wang's strong voice. He clearly thought an intruder had entered. "Who's this thief daring to break into my Wang family's door?" "George." Before he could finish his sentence, he saw me standing in the middle of the living room, eyes slightly red. His cane hit the ground with a thud, and Grandpa Wang didn't even care about it. His eyes reddened instantly, and he turned to walk back into the room. I dropped my suitcase and rushed to catch up. Just as Grandpa was about to reach his bed, I quickly grabbed his arm and said, "Grandpa, I missed you." But Grandpa didn't seem to believe me. After all, when I had told him I was going to study abroad and would return during holidays, he hadn't seen me for years. Though he knew I was coming back recently, he didn't know exactly when. It was Anna who told him. In these 6 years, I hadn't called him even once, so he probably thought I had completely forgotten about the old man. Grandpa snorted, trying to pry my hand off, but I held onto him even tighter. tears unknowingly falling onto his shoulder. Feeling the wetness on his shoulder, Grandpa sighed and finally stopped struggling. Though his words were still harsh, his tone had softened. He said, "Saying you missed me, but you didn't come home for 6 years, leaving me all alone. If it weren't for that Lee girl, you probably wouldn't even know when I die." I quickly interrupted him, my eyes full of disapproval. "Grandpa, you'll live to be 100. Don't say such gloomy things." Remembering Grandpa's words, guilt surged in my heart. I said, "Sorry, Grandpa. It's all my fault. I won't leave again. I'll stay and keep you company." "Okay." Grandpa shook his head quickly. "What nonsense are you talking? I'm still waiting for you to get married. Only when I see you happy will I feel at ease to go look for your grandma and your parents." Hearing this, my heart sank further. I knew Grandpa would leave one day, but I still hoped that day would come later, much later. After chatting for a while, the atmosphere slowly eased. Grandpa looked at me with a nostalgic look in his eyes and said, "You've grown up, slimmed down, and changed." I replied, "No matter how much I change, I'll always be Grandpa's grandson." Grandpa patted me on the back, finally calming down. He laughed heartily a few times, then suddenly seemed to remember something about my marriage. His brow furrowed slightly. "Didn't you say you were going to get married? Why did you suddenly come back?" I shook my head, not wanting to talk about it, and said, "She and I weren't a good match, so the wedding was called off." Seeing Grandpa look worried again, I recalled what Anna had said when she left. After some hesitation, I decided to tell Grandpa the truth. I said, "Anna said she'll bring her parents to discuss the wedding in a couple of days." Grandpa's eyes widened when he heard this, and it took him a while to react. Then, he burst out laughing. He said, "Haha, that girl waited for you all these years, and it seems like she really got what she wanted." 2 days later, Anna really did come with her parents. The Lee family was sincere, strongly refusing Grandpa's attempts to discuss the dowry. Lee's mother took my hand and smiled gently. She said, "Don't worry, Grandpa. George and our Anna will be happy together." I promised George's mother I'd treat him like my own son. Anna took out the prenuptial agreement again. She said, "Grandpa, this is for George. I love him, so I want to give him everything I have." I pinched the bridge of my nose, wondering if this was all just a dream, but in the end, after much persuasion, we decided to revise the prenuptial agreement. Looking at Anna and the Lee family, I finally started to feel relieved that I hadn't married Willow. Grandpa was very pleased with this marriage. Together with the Lee family, they picked a date for us to register for the marriage certificate. In Grandpa's eyes, that red booklet was the most important thing. After Anna posted about our marriage on social media, I smiled, took a picture of our marriage certificate, and snapped a photo of us holding hands. The wedding ring sparkled in the sunlight. Once the post went up, old friends from the past congratulated me. It wasn't until this moment that they believed I had married someone other than Willow. After getting the marriage certificate, all that was left was the wedding photos and ceremony. I had originally wanted to be more involved, but the Lee family took care of everything. I was only responsible for taking Anna to try on wedding dresses and offering a few suggestions for the wedding decor. I had asked Anna why her parents didn't want me involved in the preparations. She had simply nestled into my arms and said, "I want to marry you, so naturally, my family will take care of everything." During this time, Willow had tried to contact me. At first, I would hang up, but later, when it became too much, I changed my phone number and never received any calls from Willow again. The next time I heard from her was 3 days before my wedding with Anna. On the day of the wedding, Anna and I left early for the hotel to change into our outfits and have our hair done. Anna left the task of greeting guests entirely to her parents, while she stayed close to me, not leaving my side. As I watched Anna in the makeup mirror, I noticed she was staring at me intently, her eyes full of focus. I couldn't help but ask curiously, "Anna, you've planned everything so thoroughly. You didn't just start getting ready now that I'm back, did you?" She hummed lightly in response, her gaze briefly shifting away. Although Anna didn't directly answer, the moment she avoided my eyes, I could guess a little bit of the truth. Anna lifted her head, saw the thoughtful expression on my face, and realized I was overthinking things again. Just then, the makeup artist finished her work, packing up her tools while complimenting Anna. "Miss Lee, your skin is so good. Almost no makeup needed. This has been the easiest bridal makeup I've ever done in my 10+ years of experience." Anna smiled and thanked her, then stood up, quickly tiptoed, and placed a light kiss on my lips before stepping back. I couldn't help but blush. Anna gazed at me with satisfaction, a smug smile curling at the corner of her lips. "Of course, who do you think I am? After all, I'm someone's wife." Before she could finish her sentence, I gently tapped her head. "Anna," I said. She scoffed and teased, "Oh, hubby, are you already going to hit me before we're even married?" She covered her head dramatically, pretending to be in pain. I was startled, thinking I had struck her too hard. Just as I was about to check if she was okay, she pulled me into a hug and pouted. "Hubby, Why are you still calling me by my full name? She acted so pitifully that I couldn't help but roll my eyes. The makeup artist, witnessing our playful banter, couldn't help but laugh. She reminded us to avoid messing up the makeup and left the room, giving us space. We continued our playful exchange for a while, until it was almost time for the ceremony. I walked out of the dressing room first. Just then, my phone, which had been in my pocket, suddenly rang. I saw the screen flash with an unknown number. My first instinct was that it was Willow calling, and without thinking, I pressed the hang up button. However, just moments later, the same number called again. I paused. Not every unknown number had to be Willow. I couldn't let one person make me reject every unfamiliar call. Taking a deep breath, I answered the phone. A voice I didn't recognize came through the speaker. The person asked, "Hello, is this Mr. George Wong?" I hummed in acknowledgement, saying nothing, planning to listen to what the caller had to say. The voice seemed to sense my hesitation and went straight to the point. "This is the emergency department of B City Hospital. Your girlfriend, Willow, was in a car accident due to speeding. Her condition is critical. Could you come to B City Hospital?" I froze for a moment, and it took me a while to process the meaning of those words. Willow was in B City. She had a car accident because of speeding. The voice on the other end asked, "Hello, Mr. Wong, are you still there?" The nurse, noticing my prolonged silence, repeated the question, pulling me out of my stupor. I took a deep breath and, in a calm tone, responded, "Sorry, but I'm no longer with her. I'm getting married today, so I really can't find the time to come. Can you contact her other family members or friends?" After saying this, I hung up before the nurse could respond. Chapter 4. Although I had a faint suspicion that Willow's arrival in B City might be related to me, as I'd just said, we had already broken up, and I no longer had the strength to get involved in her affairs. Besides, she had so many people around her to rely on. She didn't need me. The wedding reception was in full swing, with friends and family filling the entire hall. Anna, dressed in a long-tailed wedding gown, walked toward me, holding her father's arm with each step. Grandpa had always hoped I'd find someone to spend my life with, but when the day actually came, I found him standing there with red eyes, clearly emotional. I said, "Grandpa, today is a joyous occasion. Why are you crying?" I said this, but seeing Grandpa like that, a wave of emotion surged in my heart. I forced a smile, trying to lighten the atmosphere. "And the new house isn't far from here. Now that we're married, we can visit each other often." Grandpa patted the back of my hand and said, Okay. Grandpa isn't sad anymore. The aisle, which seemed so long, felt like it passed in the blink of an eye. When Anna and I clasped hands tightly, Grandpa, standing by, said with a serious tone, "Anna, you two should love each other, hand in hand, and live together for the rest of your lives." His voice wavered as he spoke, and despite having promised not to cry, his emotions were clearly overwhelming. Time really flew by. Grandpa had grown old. I still remembered the days when I would sit on his lap as a child, listening to his stories. Now, I had grown up, ready to get married and have children. Anna nodded seriously, tightly holding my hand, her eyes full of tenderness and affection. She said, "Grandpa, don't worry. I'll make sure to take good care of George. I won't disappoint you." The vows, exchanging of rings, and the kiss. In front of friends and family, Anna and I officially became husband and wife. She said, "George, you're finally my husband." 2 months later, I received an invitation. The bride was Willow, and the groom's name was clearly written as Makoto. It seemed that, after all, they had ended up together. Lee, the lawyer, emerged from the study, grabbed the invitation from my hand, and frowned as she read it. She asked, "Your ex is getting married?" Seeing the jealous look on her face, I knew exactly what was going on. I laughed and pulled her into my arms. I asked, "Lee, the top lawyer, jealous? You and I are legally married. Our relationship is official. Me and Willow, that's already the past." I continued, "Besides, she's now with the love of her life." Anna buried her head in my chest and grumbled for a moment, then said, "Fine, I'll go with you." I smiled, seeing her act all awkward. "I wasn't planning on leaving you alone in B City anyway." When Anna and I sat down, I overheard some gossip. Apparently, Willow was 3 months pregnant. That timeline matched when I was still in high city. They said she wasn't going to pursue IVF anymore, but it was a lie. I couldn't help but sneer. Anna squeezed my hand tighter. When people saw Anna and me together, they joked, and I introduced her with a smile. "This is my wife, Anna, the top lawyer." I never imagined that the car accident would leave Willow completely paralyzed, confined to a wheelchair. I heard that her hands were also damaged. As a surgeon, that was worse than death to her. On stage, Makoto asked, "Willow, will you marry me?" But Willow only turned her head, and I had a strange feeling she was looking at me. I ate my food, not even glancing at her. However, in the next second, Anna suddenly retched. I turned to her and asked, "What's wrong?" She shook her head. "I don't know. I feel a little unwell." Panicking, I took her hand and rushed out, insisting on taking her to the hospital. So, I didn't hear Willow's words. "I do, George." After transferring from the emergency room to the obstetrics department, the doctor asked about her last period. That's when Anna and I realized her period had been delayed by half a month. The doctor asked, "Has this happened before?" His words snapped me out of my daze. Anna shook her head, stating that although her period had never been particularly punctual, it had never been delayed this much. For caution, the doctor arranged for a series of tests. When we received the confirmation report that she was 4 weeks pregnant, Anna's expression was dazed, as if she couldn't believe it. In the next moment, I excitedly cupped her face and kissed her lips deeply. I said, "Wife, we're having a baby." Seeing my excitement, Anna's heart filled with joy and excitement as well. She tightly grasped my hand, tears welling in her eyes as she softly said, "Hubby, you're going to be a dad." I smiled, holding her hand tightly and said, "Yes, Lee, the top lawyer, you're going to be a mom." When we left the hospital, I received a message from an old friend. They said Willow and Makoto had fought at their wedding. It got really ugly, and they even physically fought. Both of them were sent to the hospital. Willow miscarried. The doctor says she may never be able to have children again. And Makoto, he was stabbed by Willow. He may not survive. I couldn't help but feel a little sentimental. I never imagined that Willow and Makoto would end up like this. But then again, there's an old saying, evil begets evil, and good or bad will eventually be repaid. I intertwined my fingers with Anna's, and she smiled as she said, "Mr. Wong, I'm hungry. Let's go get some soup dumplings." I smiled and pulled Anna into my arms. I said, "All right, wife,